You're listening to the AmWritingFantasy podcast. In today's publishing landscape, you can reach fans all over the world. Query letters are a thing of the past. You don't even need a literary agent. There is nothing standing in the way of making a living from writing. Join two best-selling authors who have self-published more than 20 books between them. Now, on to the show with your hosts, Autumn Burt and Jasper Schmidt.
Hello, I'm Jesper.
And I'm Autumn.
This is episode 50 of the AmWritingFantasy podcast, and we are going to discuss the book description. And some also call it the blurb. It's basically what you write on the back of your book and as a sales description on sites like Amazon. So we're going to discuss what makes for a good book description, how do you write one, which can convert to sales, and that's all coming up on this episode.
Excellent. I can't wait because this is so important to your book sales and interesting readers. But yeah, we'll get there. But first, we have some news. So you had quite the week, I understand, Jesper.
Yeah, I don't think that our listeners want to hear any of the details because I've just been sick with the stomach flu for several days, and it was not a pleasant experience, and the details I will spare you.
It does not sound like fun. I mean, that definitely puts a dent in everything. I mean, it's like a full stop when you're truly, truly sick and in bed. So I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yeah, much better now. Yeah, I was in bed for 3 days with 40 degrees fever. So you can imagine now that I'm feeling better and I get back to my work and whatnot. There's just a ton of things that I'm behind on now, but that's the name of the game.
It is. It always seems like I know you and I know us, and we always have our to-do list that we'll never see the bottom of because we're always adding new things. And so you not working on something for a few days, it must have looked like a mountain grew.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I would say today, for my time, we're recording this in the evening. So all day today, I've been really busy trying to catch up on stuff. But I think I have some stuff I need to catch up on tomorrow as well. But for the most part, I'm quite pleased with the progress I made today. So I got a lot done today. So that's good.
That's very good. That's very good. Now for me, I mean, I told you I was maybe struggling with a little bit of a cold. I had a small fever, nothing like you had, but I think my computer is like cursed right now, honestly. Have you ever had one of those weeks where like you try to go do something simple and whatever you try to do either needs updated, just isn't working right, you got to reboot, you got to reload. It just seems like everything I've tried to touch on my computer this week has been fighting me. So I'm about ready to toss it out the window, even though of course I can't because I kind of need it.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's been so
maybe
much
your computer
trouble.
has the stomach flu as well.
I think it might be. At least I know it's not a virus, but it might have the stomach flu. And even my Wacom tablet, so you know I do a lot of graphic design. You know, I go and work on something a couple of days ago. I go back to it, and first Photoshop didn't work. The new update completely. I can't open a file that was nearly finished. This really big, full paperback wrap, and Photoshop couldn't open it. So 2 hours later, my entire time to work on it, I finally managed to just said to heck with it and reverted to the former edition of Photoshop, and it would open then. So at least I got it as far as opening. But then I go to work on a new cover today, and my Wacom tablet, that I use for drawing, isn't working. Every time I go to touch it with the pen, it goes to the upper left corner of my screen. I'm like, what? I can touch it, but every time I use the pen, it zooms off.
It's alive. It's alive.
So after some research, that I finally decided it was probably the drivers and updated those. So I am ready to work again, but I'll get back to that later tonight, I think.
Oh my God. But this is like one thing, that I cannot stand. It's like also, if my computer is not working or something like that, it's like, I feel like, what should I say? Like the carpenter who is trying to do some carpentry and then his tools are not working. So it's just like, it just has to work. I don't want to fix tools. They just have to work. They're there to serve me. And I hate it when they don't work.
Absolutely. And it seems like, especially for something creative, you're in the mind, you're like thinking about it. You want to sit down to write and you either don't have paper or your Scrivener isn't working or something silly like that. And it's just like, it kills the energy that you have going that you want to give to whatever you're working on. And so, yeah, that's, I think, part of the frustration too. Who wants to spend 2 hours trying to figure out a Photoshop update when they could be drawing and making happy pictures? So that was my week.
A week on the internet with the Am Writing Fantasy podcast.
So this is sort of a bit of old news by now. I guess not old, but it's like a month old, I would say. But I posted some details about it last week on Patreon because we have now got the ability to place Amazon ads in the Amazon UK and the Amazon German stores.
That's right.
So that's pretty cool. I mean, technically, you could do it before, but you needed an Amazon Advantage account, which was pretty damn difficult to get. I tried like 3 times applying for it myself, and I never got one.
Wow.
Because you're not supposed to. It was sort of like a workaround of the system, if you like. So I never got in there. But now they have officially opened so that you can actually place Amazon ads in the UK and German store via the KDP dashboard itself.
Nice.
So I started testing out that and playing around with it somewhat. So that's pretty good, actually. I've started to see upticks in sales in the UK, where it was very difficult to sell something before, because if you can't advertise, we all know how you drown in the sea of books.
Yeah.
So
easily.
So it has helped a lot. But I will say, for those who's gonna test this stuff out, be careful of the currency differences, please. Because if you are bidding like, let's say, 50 cent in the US, don't put 50 cent into the UK store, because then it's 50, it's
50
pound currency. Yeah, no, not 50 pounds, but it's all of a sudden pounds currency, right? So 0.5 is a lot more than 0.5 in the US store.
Yes, it is.
And the same thing for the German store, that's euro. So that's 50 cent euro and not 50 cent USD. So be careful. Otherwise, you will pay a lot of money to Amazon all of a sudden.
That's a very good tip. I'll have to remember that. I haven't tried that out, but I do need to beef up my advertising again. I'm trying to revamp thinking outside the box on marketing, because like you said, so many people are doing the exact same thing. And I'm always hitting that wall going, what is next? What is new? What is no one else doing? And well, when I figure it out and get it working, I'll certainly let you know. But for now, I'm just still
and then a month later,
brainstorming.
everybody will be doing it.
Well, that's true. Maybe I won't let anyone know. Maybe I'll just let you know, or maybe just our listeners. I don't know. We'll figure that one out. But I am bound and determined to find something new and innovative, because there's got to be something else that can work, because, oh my gosh, Amazon is so saturated.
Yeah, but to be honest, I think finding something new, it is difficult. I think it might be more about just being better at the ads than everybody else, so that you just learn how to do it even better. I mean, Amazon ads, it might not be the best example, because that's like uploading keywords and doing some bidding. So, but at least if you're doing something like Facebook ads, there is a lot of different variances that you can sort of apply to your ads in terms of how you're targeting and how you're placing the ads and all that stuff. So I think there you can learn how to do it really well, and then basically make a difference. And we have some, this is way too early to talk about that, but I can never help myself. But we have some stuff that we already have prepared and developed for free course that we're going to do in 2020, but I can almost say with certainty that it's not going to be ready until after summer next year. But in there, we're actually going to give you the possibility to get your hands on an ads tracker that we use, or I use so far, but it's also used for our books. And it's it will. Well, I already wrote it, so I know it's
awesome.
And it's explaining all the best practices and how to do it, how to target, how to where to place your ads, how to think about your ad copy, and everything is in there. So we're going to give you the possibility for you to get a hands of that in the last half of 2020. And of course, if anything changes, I will of course update it as well. But yeah, and then once we give that to you, then everybody will start doing that. And then I'll need to figure out something new. But that's
we'll
okay.
try something new. But that's all right. It is really such a cool sheet. So I mean, I was excited when I saw it, and I need to get into using it. Get my, like I said, my marketing tamed. But it's really excellent.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, that was some stuff I posted about on Patreon last week.
Yeah.
And I think if you want, dear listener, to get some exclusive posts like that one that I mentioned here, together with writing tips that Autumn posts regularly as well. We also have early access to the podcast episodes, dedicated Q&A sessions, and much, much more than... check out AmWritingFantasy on Patreon. There is a link in the show notes to down below. So I just have to say that there is a lot of work that goes into producing these podcast episodes every week. So if you do find them valuable, as little as $1 a month will really make sure that we keep the lights on here. So consider that, please.
Yeah, and we appreciate it. And especially, though, not just the patronage and getting some, that $1 a month. But I know, like Zaid had once again mentioned that he really liked the one recent podcast where I mentioned that even though I'm here in my 40s, I just discovered this awesome purple beauty berry that I didn't know exists, that there's actually a plant that has purple berries, and I love purple. So it really connected home with him that, even the most experienced character in his story is not going to know everything about the world or everything that's going on. And I thought that was really cool because, one, I helped another writer, and two, it's so true. It's another perspective. Just because you have a knowledgeable character, that they're not going to know everything. And so it's so much fun to get to talk writing and help each other out and, get new perspectives. And we do that all on Patreon. So it's kind of fun. I hope you join us there.
On to today's topic.
Oh, so book descriptions. That's actually one of my it's a topic I quite like, but I used to hate. I guess I could put it like that.
That's true. I think it's one you have to grow to love. And I see so many authors, complaining about writing them. And I have to admit that I used to complain too. Like, how do you boil 120,000 words down to, ideally something around 500. But I know for me, I really conquered these when I wrote the 11 short stories that went into the beginning, the prequel to my dystopian series. And I decided to release all 11 individually. And I think I was really getting excited about this, and so excited I had the covers, and then I realized, oh my goodness, that means I need 11 blurbs. 11. Then I still have the rest of the series to write. What was I doing? And so that's when I just changed my tune and got much more scientific and much more organized about how to write this. And I know you like this. You have a whole book on book descriptions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're gonna put that in the description field. Sorry, that was my old YouTube habit coming up there in the show notes. I mean, we're gonna put that in the show notes.
2 years of YouTubing, I guess we can forgive you.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe it's because writing a book description, it's a bit. Maybe people think a bit about it as writing ad copy almost, So we used to putting together these wonderfully beautiful constructed words in a full fantasy novel, and all of a sudden we have to do ad copy in 200 words. It's like, well, we don't want to do that. Maybe that's part of why people don't like it. I'm not sure. I mean, if I think back, originally it was not because I did not like it due to the ad copy aspect of it. I think it's more like I just didn't understand how to do it in a way that it would not read like either a very boring ad copy or it would be like almost like a summary of what the book is about, and that's not the point either. So and I think I just didn't know how to do it.
That's very true. And it's so often you can see the ones who, didn't put in the time or weren't really sure what they were doing. And even I know for you and I both, we've updated ours and kept changing and evolving it as, as we learn. And sometimes the comments that people leave, and we'll get into that as we talk about how to do book descriptions, they can change what you focus on, because sometimes readers will find things in your book that you didn't know you put there, and it's what they love, and it's the best hook to put into your blurb.
Yeah, but I think when it comes to book descriptions, we just cannot ignore this. That there is a business aspect of being an author, and I know we've said it before, but it bears repeating. You have to sell books, and whether we like it or not, though, the book description, it's just a crucial factor when a reader decides to buy your book, or if they just decide to ignore it. That's really where the book description needs to do its job.
I agree. I mean, usually it's really a staged thing. So they often see your book cover and it makes them curious enough that they're going to go read your description. And if the description does not make them, the blurb, make them curious enough to go get a sample, if not outright buy it, then that's where you're going to lose them. So this is the second most serious part of, trying to sell your book.
Yeah, I mean, because the cover will not sell the book alone. The cover will get people to click on it and say, okay, that looks interesting. And then, as you just say, then the book description is the one that needs to close the deal. It's sort of like a catchy teaser or something like for a movie trailer or something like that. It's the movie trailer that gets us into the theater and buy the ticket, right? But the movie poster is the one that makes us go and check out that movie trailer, right? So it's sort of the same journey that we're going through here when we're selling books. So I think it's really important.
Definitely. And so I know we both have, because I happen to have edited and formatted your book description book, so I'm very intimately familiar with it. But I've also, I think before we started working together, I had written a very small pamphlet, a little worksheet on how to do them. And we have very similar processes, which go figure, that's how we teamed up in the first place.
Yeah.
So I know we both have a theory of like how many paragraphs and which ones, what each one is supposed to do. And that really helps you focus on what needs to happen in your book description. So for the opening, what is the first thing that potential readers see? What do you like to have on top?
Yeah, I mean, at the top, so I have 5 steps to write a great blurb. And that at the top, you basically, well, maybe I should just say the 5 steps first. So you have what I call the tagline. Yeah. The second one is character introduction. The third one is inciting incident. And the fourth is escalate tension. And number 5 is dire straits and call to action. So we can go through them in a bit more detail here. But at the top is the tagline. And I think probably one of the most, I don't know if I can call it famous, but one of the best examples of a killer tagline, it was one that Adam Croft wrote. So Adam Croft is a 7-figure author and probably one of the biggest indie authors in the world. And by the way, we are going to have him here on the AmWritingFantasy podcast between Christmas and New Year's as like a special treat. So that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's a little present to everyone.
Yes, a bit of a Christmas present. But with his book, Her Last Tomorrow, he wrote the tagline that went like this: could you murder your wife to save your daughter? That's the kind of thing that entices readers to buy a book. That's like, what? Okay, I need to read what that is about, right?
Yes.
It's an incredibly effective way to catch people's attention.
Yes.
Because I think the other part that you need to be mindful is about that not everybody will browse for your book on the laptop or something. And so not depending on what device you're using to actually browse the books, your book description might not really show up except for the tagline. So it's important that what is on top there is really, really eye-catching.
Oh, yeah.
So that it doesn't get clipped and then people are just like, okay, I got a half a sentence of something that doesn't make any sense to me.
No, and I love your example it's a full sentence, it's a question, but a lot of them are often just phrases, and those work too. Like some of the ones I've found that when you read them, you could almost start thinking, oh my gosh, I could write a book about this. A royal assassin, a fallen princess, friends, enemies, bound by prophecy. There's so much into these. Another one that I've always really liked is an heirloom of forbidden magic, a corrupt sorcerer who seeks to rule. You're starting to see some key components, but they kind of give you the tingles. A really good tagline makes you go, it kind of perks you up and you're like, ooh, what's that? And you gotta read the next line. And so that's what I think is so cool. They're fantastic. Once you figure out your tagline, you're going to post this everywhere. It's going to be your tweets. It's going to be your Instagram. It's going to be what you put. Actually, for now, if you go to my website, all of my books, I used to have the book description like next to the picture of the book, and then the buy links and stuff like that. People don't like to see that many words now. I literally have pared that down to just the tagline. No description. So I have the tagline, the picture of my books, and then the links to go get it. That's how important it is. It should sell the book basically on its own. It's what, like I said, even marketing images. You're going to put the tagline.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I guess just to cement the point, how important it is, because I know that Mark Dawson, who is another 7-figure indie author, he actually surveyed more than 10,000 readers, and he asked them what triggered each person to read his book. Was it his cover, his reviews, his book title, and so forth and so forth. And what he learned out of that survey was that almost 5 times as many readers picked up his book because of the book description, as opposed to getting enticed by the cover.
Wow.
So you see that just drives home the point that it is incredibly important. The book description is, and I really don't, honestly, I don't think that most people understand that. You know, most authors think it's something like, I'll put something together there and then slam, up there goes. I think that's how most authors approach it.
Yes.
And it's a huge mistake.
I agree. And it definitely takes some practice to get the right one. And even when you think you have the right one, that's what your mailing lists, other authors, go ask them. I mean, post in our AmWritingFantasy Facebook group. That is a fantastic way to get an idea of how your blurb is working and some, feedback on what you might need to tweak.
Yeah. I usually say write 15 different variations of the tagline, and it has to be short, catchy, and memorable.
Absolutely.
And then, just as Autumn is saying, then my usual advice is that once you have nailed it down to your own 3 favorites, then start posting those and ask other people's opinions.
Yeah.
Ask them to vote for their favorite, and then maybe the winner will not be the one that you expect, but if you get enough people voting on it and giving the opinion on it, then you should probably follow what people are saying. But I guess the one caveat to that is that make sure you're asking people who actually read fantasy.
Yes, that's very true.
Don't ask your mother and your uncle and whatnot what they think is best, because unless they read fantasy already, then their opinion matters nothing.
Exactly. And make sure you ask the people who are actually going to not only read fantasy, but give you an opinion, not like everything you do is wonderful, dear.
Oh yeah, that part as well. Yes, that's true.
So
okay, should we move on to step number 2?
Yeah, after the tagline, you said it's what you have the character introduction is how you put it.
Yeah. So this is where we need to introduce the character. Mm-hmm. And this is actually where the book description begins, because technically the tagline is just a teaser.
Yes.
So now here in step 2, this is where the actual book description takes its beginning. And it's usually a short paragraph, and it should appeal to general human emotions and desires. So it should be exciting and not like, Frodo is a hobbit of 33 years old and he lives in a place called the Shire, blah, 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 blah. We don't want to read that. So it should be something exciting, but we do need to introduce the character as the first thing, because the character is what the readers need to identify with. And that's why they should care about reading this book.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think it's one of the things I like to put in. So this is where you're trying to figure out, you go with your main character. This is who you're going to feature and highlight and do something that's going to hook the reader, catch their emotions so that they kind of want to know what's going on without giving too much away. But, for me, when I was doing this the first time, I have 4 main characters in my first novel, in my debut, because I'm just sadistic and I wrote this huge. I think I counted once how many characters I have by the end of book 6, and I'm not nearly as bad as Game of Thrones, but I had, yeah, if you don't read fantasy and you try to get through mine and you don't like multiple characters, you're going to be like, what the heck is going on? So choosing the one main character is really hard, but I definitely learned as I grew and developed as an author that you need to pick one, at the most two. And this is not the time to feature how clever you are at naming places, people, things, creatures. Literally, you don't want to throw too many new weird things that people don't understand unless they've read 6 of your books. So pick your main character, choose the name, and everything else should be her best friend, her enemy. Stick to keeping just one name, because the more weird words you throw out, they're sticking points, and the reader's going to be like, they don't know, they don't care, they're not going to be overwhelmed by how cool you can name things. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, is the whole book going to be like looking up a thesaurus to try to figure out what's going on? So that's my biggest advice when you're doing the character thing, is just, awesome place names. I'm glad you can come up with them. But when you get to the description, cut them out. You just want to focus on one thing, and you want what the reader to focus on, not the names, but that emotional pull of something really important.
Yeah, I think that series that you just mentioned, I think that was the one where you emailed when you got to book 6 and you said, what the hell am I doing? Why did I include this many characters? Now I have to complete all these arcs, and you were really frustrated with yourself.
It wasn't. That's actually why I switched to Scrivener. I was writing book number 5 out of the 6, and I realized the plots were so complicated. The subplots, you have that many characters. Do you know how many subplots I was juggling? I said, to heck with it, and I went from Pages to Scrivener like that, and my book plotting has never been better.
Yeah, I don't think it's on writing, but it was somewhere where I read one time that Stephen King also had a problem, that he all of a sudden he had way too many characters in the book, and he had no idea what to do. So he just blew the whole thing up and killed most of them, and then that was solved.
Yes, this is a total tangent, but I read a great meme today that said, yes, I have too many characters. I'm thinking of killing off a few of them. That should really spice up my autobiography.
Yeah.
So okay, there's writing humor aside. So I have a few examples of ways of, things that I think are pretty interesting. So on a planet far from Earth, descendants of a marooned space travelers fight a decades-long war. Shy scholar Victoria knows nothing of this conflict until pirates kidnapped her to sell her to the sadistic tyrant behind it. And so, those are getting on. You're trying to find a way of giving a little bit of a setting, a little bit of an emotion, some kind of nuance of who the character is, without throwing out, they could have sent out the name of the planet, they could have sent out so many other things, the name of the place this woman was living, but you just want to have the only real name as your main character. And then trying to find some ways of, emotions. She's been kidnapped. You kind of draw in the reader to keep going to the next part.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And the next part is inciting incident. So that's probably sounds familiar to most of you, I would think. But so the inciting incident from a blurb perspective, mm-hmm. So that should be a big revelation. I don't know, it could be like Frodo receiving the ring, or somebody's on the run, or perhaps something happens that no one expected. The trick is just to ensure that it relates to the character somehow. So it's not like in a far-off land, a big atomic bomb exploded. I don't know why that would happen in a fantasy novel, but that just came to my mind. But it has to, unless it's because radiation will come to the character in 24 hours, or what do I know, unless it's something that affects the character, mm-hmm. then it doesn't qualify as an inciting incident from a blurb perspective. It has to be affecting the character. And again, you're probably looking at something like only a paragraph long or something like that, nothing more.
Yes, and I like to say about this, so this is one where you can actually use your inciting incident from the novel. So if you use the plotting, if you use even just the 7 stages and you're crafting the blurb, you and I, we've talked about this. I tend to actually sort of develop a theme and almost a rough blurb before I start writing, because then I kind of know what I'm writing. It's a good way of building out the whole novel outline. So for this one, it helps to use your inciting incident. I know a lot of authors who they feel like they're writing this blurb and what they're trying to put in here is actually the climax. And that's too far along. That's way too much information. Your goal as you're writing your description is to get the reader to get through that first couple of chapters of your novels, just until that's where they're going to sell, that they're going to be so hooked on the character and what's happening that they don't care. They'll be surprised by what's coming in the climax as well. So this really is, when you're writing your description, you're kind of only focusing on that first third, if even that much, of your novel. So really, this might be the inciting incident that, the reader is going to get to in the first chapter 2, 3 chapters. So they're going to get to this incident pretty quickly, but that's very satisfying for them, because they kind of go, oh, this is what this is why they read the description and they go buy the novel. So they want to have that solution. But by the time they get to that resolution of what they read the description for, they're already so invested in the book. They read another 100,000 words, not a problem.
Yeah, that should be the aim.
And then the next book and the next book. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because the next one is escalate tension. So I think that builds on what you just said as well, because it's more about finding that next beat that directly affects the protagonist after the inciting incident. So you're basically, I don't think it would be correct to say it that you're building a short mini story in the blurb, because that's not quite what you're doing, but it builds upon itself. So you have a tagline which, when people read it, it should prompt them to say, okay, that's interesting, let me read a bit more. Then they read the next paragraph, which was the character introduction, and say, okay, that sounds interesting, I'll read a bit more. And then the inciting incident starts to pull them in, and then you get to escalate tension, which then just builds on what came before. Mm-hmm. So it's more like you keep them reading, and you're sucking them in to basically drive them down the funnel until they get to the next step number 5, where you are trying to make the sale, basically. So that's the underlying idea. And I know that sounds simple, but it's absolutely not.
It is not. And for this one, this is the part that it's actually useful to ask questions, and you want to show clear stakes. This is where you can say, will they survive? Or will they be defeated? These are the ones where you're asking those questions. And so if you are following the 7 steps of story structure, this is sort of those initial openings of the reaction phase, where the character is reeling, they're questioning, they want to go back to what their life was like before, or they don't. But you're kind of asking those questions that character is basically dealing with right after the inciting incident in the story. So this is where you want to look for those sort of emotions to pull out. And these are, like I said, this is a great place to actually ask questions. Don't answer them. Let them sit there so that the reader's like, well, will they survive? You want to capture that little oh my gosh, what's going on? How will they get out of this little event that you've already drugged the reader on through this tiny little 500-word story that you're writing?
Yeah, I think for me, I need to be, in my view at least, we need to be a bit careful here, because escalate tension, that step, you need to be really careful that you're not jumping into step number 5, which is dire straits, because basically in step number 5, you have the low point. And this is the part where you can start asking, the question is how, not necessarily that you write this question, but at least get the reader to ask the question in their own mind, how are they going to survive this stuff? And if you already put that too much in the escalate tension step, then your blurb is going to run out of steam in the last crucial part. So you need to be really careful on how to balance it. So basically, you could almost view escalate tension like the bridge between the inciting incident and then the low point, maybe towards the end of your novel. So it's like what sits in between there that you can sort of build the tension with. So think of it like you are pushing the person reading the blurb from the inciting incident and towards like the disaster point of the novel that is going to prompt them to say, okay, nobody can survive this. And if you can get them to say that, then they will pick up the book, because then they want to understand how in the world is this going to work.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, that's a great lead into the final paragraph.
Yeah, so obviously you're not trying to, with Dire Straits, you are not trying to reveal the ending of your novel in any way or give away any twist or surprises. That's not the point, right? So as we already said, it's a teaser. It's like the movie trailer, and if you think back on the movie trailers you hate the most, it's the ones that where you can sort of see what's going to happen. That's really bad. Yes. So you don't want to do that.
Or where they take all the good scenes of the entire movie and put it in the movie trailer, and like you could just watch that and skip the movie. So
yeah. So yeah, exactly. So the idea is just to leave the reader wondering how in the world is the hero going to make this,
right.
And just leave them there. And then once you have left them there on that fictional cliff there, you let them hang there, and then you give them the call to action. And basically a call to action could be something as simple as the last line just reading, buy the book today, or something like that. And it sounds stupid, because you would think that, well, if they are sitting there, they've clicked the cover, they're on the book page, maybe on Amazon, and they're reading through the entire blurb, aren't they there because they want to buy the book? Yes, and most of them will probably, but studies have shown, though, that a direct call to action like buy the book today, it does increase the conversion rate. So there's no reason not to leverage that fact and just write those few words at the end of it, and just, convert a few more sales. I mean, why not, right?
Exactly. I've always thought that was funny. It's like, well, wait, they're on Amazon reading the blurb and you have to tell them to go buy it. But it makes a big difference to get them emotionally hooked so that they go and press that, buy now or download a sample now. It really does help. And I also say there's sometimes I like to include something called the emotional sell, which comes right after Dire Straits. And that's where if you happen to have some really good reviews or awards or just something else that kind of builds up, like what fans are calling the new great epic fantasy, pick it up today. It doesn't hurt to have, if you have something else to put in there that's kind of an emotional sell to get them to really get excited, kind of validate you as an author or your book from other people's perspectives. They're saying, oh yes, this is a very good book. So if you've got a review quote or something else or an award, something you can put in there, it can really helps to ferment, hey, this is a great book. And then tell them, go get it. And they will run off and go buy it.
Yeah, it's that social proof, and I will also say, if you let's say that you released the book like 5 years ago, and in the meantime it have accumulated maybe, I don't know, whatever, hundreds of reviews, let's just say that, then don't feel too shy to go back and update your review and just add that stuff into the call to action section here, as Autumn is saying. Just say like hundreds of 4.5 star reviews on Amazon or whatever, right. Just add that one line at the end there just to increase the conversion rates, because at the end of the day, every single sale counts.
Absolutely.
And selling books is not like it's not uploading and then the sales will just tick in. You need to convert everybody you can get to land on that landing page.
Absolutely. And I will say, too, that there is sometimes you'll see blurbs on Amazon that go past the call to action and keep going. And I know some people really wonder about those. And that's partially because Amazon and other places give you over 1,000 words to put into your review. And I think, I forget who it is. I almost think it's 5,000 words. That's a lot of words. And you don't have to fill it. You don't have to use it all. But there are people who know the algorithms, and they know the more times that they can put in their keywords, fantasy, blah, 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 they're going to rank higher. So there is sometimes you can have a question and answer session or an interview. I've seen those things after the call to action. And I'm kind of ambivalent about that. I don't know how you feel about it, Jesper. I know why they're doing it. They're usually doing it to hit all the keywords they need to rank higher on Amazon. But it can kind of dilute everything that came above it.
Yeah, in my view, you need to be really careful you're not diluting the blurb. The blurb needs to read well, and it needs to be a good blurb and stand on its own. And the Amazon algorithms are getting so smart that they actually index and read the blurb anyway. So I, I think keyword stuffing is one of the, well, it's the old days advice.
Yes, it is.
It's still good to have keywords, of course, but then if you write a really good blurb that talks about what the book is about and it's an epic fantasy or whatever, and you're going to have the keywords there anyway. So just stuffing more in it's not going to help, actually. I maybe from an algorithm perspective, you might get a few more keywords in, but from a reader-friendly perspective, you're going to lose, right? So I don't know. I won't say that it cannot be done, but you really need to be careful with what you're doing if that's what you're trying to do. And I think it's just more safe not to try to be clever like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good way of looking at it, how you said it. It's something that used to be done, keyword stuffing. I think we've moved beyond that. And I think if readers don't realize what it is, I just think that, yeah, it's diluting it. So it's probably not current best practice, but you still see it done. And maybe you've done it, so you might need to go back and, hey, update your blurbs. It doesn't hurt to double check, your blurbs after even a couple years as your book ages and see, make sure that it still sounds as good. And like I said, sometimes if you read your readers' comments, you'll find some new things to add, and that's always a good thing. So you might be able to update your blurb and make it more exciting and maybe pick up a few more readers.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about being an indie author. It's so easy to do these updates. You can always go in, you can upload a new blurb on your book, and it takes like 10 minutes. It's so incredibly easy. And in older days, that would have been impossible, but nowadays it's so incredibly easy. So, if your blurb is not working, if it's not converting well, and all this stuff, try to write a new one and do something differently with it. And of course, if you need help, then as we set up on the top, I actually wrote an entire step-by-step guide on how to write not only just a blurb, but actually a fantasy book description. So it's specifically focusing on fantasy book descriptions. And I'll add a link in the show notes for that. And it comes with a lot of examples. It tells you exactly what to do step by step. It also has a bonus chapter on nonfiction blurbs. So for those of you who might be looking at writing nonfiction, like Autumn and I do, then there is a bonus chapter on what to focus on for nonfiction blurbs as well. So next Monday, we are going to share the 3 pieces of advice that we wish we had received when we first started out.
Yay!
If you like what you just heard, there's a few things you can do to support the AmWritingFantasy podcast. Please tell a fellow author about the show and visit us at Apple Podcast and leave a rating and review. You can also join Autumn and Jasper on patreon.com/AmWritingFantasy. For as little as $1 a month, you'll get awesome rewards and keep the AmWritingFantasy podcast going. Stay safe out there and see you next Monday.